Hello everybody, this is Marshall Gamer and welcome to my very first 2024 election map prediction. I have seen so many people do these and now I'm going to be doing one for myself and for you guys. And this, I will do more. I will do more coming up. Let's get right started. In the general election, Trump versus Harris, you can see that Harris in the polling average is up by 1.4%. In the most recent poll, it says Harris is up by 3. The one before that has Trump up by 4. So you can see it's very close. But Harris has a general election, is ahead by Trump by 1.4. So that suggests she's going to get 1.4 more votes than Trump will. However, it's not necessarily mean that she will win the election. We actually saw before in previous elections. I mean, 2016 is when Trump won and he lost the general election. He lost the popular vote. But anyways, let's stick with the facts. We're going to be basing this map solely off of the polling averages. So totally neutral, going off what the latest polling averages say. Let's see what the map says. So let's start her off here in California. Starting off with California, we have one poll. It has Harris up by 25%. That's obviously going to be a quite solid margin, but we can see it is a smaller margin compared to 2016 and 2020. Both times, Biden and Clinton were ahead of Trump by a larger margin, so it's a little bit closer. But, I mean, either way, 25%, it's no doubt that California, the biggest state in terms of its electoral votes, will obviously be getting, or will be a solid blue state. It has been for a long time and will continue to be. Moving on to Oregon. All right, here in Oregon, you can see Harris is up by 5%. It is a much smaller margin, especially compared to 2016 and 2020. In 2020, Biden led by 16.4. Obviously, that's a huge margin. We can see Harris is just not doing as well. Harris is just not what Biden was, or Clinton, even for that matter. Either way, Harris is just not a Biden or an Obama or anything like that, so she is not doing as well. But either way, it will still be expected to go to the Democrats by a likely margin. We don't have much from Washington, but it probably will be going to the Democrats, most likely, probably by a likely margin as well. Oregon and Washington tend to be very similar, so going off of that, it probably will go on to be quite similar. Next up is Nevada, and here we have our first battleground state, Nevada, very important state right here. As we can see here in the polling averages, Nevada, we scroll down here, went to Clinton and Biden in both 2016 and 2020 by the exact same margin, actually. Small same margin, 2.4, 2.4. But if we look at the polling averages now, we can see here that Nevada will probably be going to Trump. Trump actually held a larger lead when Biden was still in the race, and Harris brought it closer. Nevertheless, we still see that. I mean, look at this. We got 10, 9, 8. You can see that's when Biden was still in. That's before he dropped out. But then here we have Bloomberg had this poll where they had Harris up by 2, although that's just simply not true. They're well known for just blowing the Democrats out of the water for no reason. They are very much so not, this is not correct whatsoever. Let me just put it like that. Nevertheless, we have more down to earth polls, if you will, and they still have Trump up by a good percentage. And overall, he's up by 1.3%. The New York Times here actually has Trump up by 1%. And New York Times is another one of those organizations that tends to overestimate the Democrats by solid margins. So the fact that they have Trump up by 1% is likely means that he is leading in this state by at least a small margin. So we will be putting Nevada into the lean Republicans. That's our first. We now have Republican states on the board. All right, moving on to the next battleground state right next door to Nevada. We were going to be going over to Arizona. Very close state, very close, probably the closest we have so far. I will obviously double check that. Looking at it down here, we can see 2016 it went to Trump by 3.5. 2020, this was big. It went to Biden by 0.3. That was big. It went to the Democrats for the first time in a long time. But as we can see right now, look how close this is. Trump is ahead here, and then for a brief second, and in fact yesterday, on August 17th, Harris was up by 0.2, but now today, Trump is up by 0.2. Looking at the polls, we can see why. The New York Times, which again is well known to overestimate the Democrats here, have always put Democrats up higher than they usually are. They had Harris up by 5, but now we have this one, which has Trump up by 2. Again, staying neutral, that is my goal for this map, is that Trump will win this state by 0.2%. Again, it probably will be a little bit more than that. The Democrats are usually overestimated. So we will be putting Arizona into a lean Republican side. Moving on to some of these other states, like for example, these states are all going to be pretty much solidly red. There's just going to be no competition in most of these states, filling out the northwestern part of the country. Let's move on to Nebraska. So moving on to Nebraska here, we will be putting Nebraska as the whole state will likely go to Trump, and so will these districts, except for one. As we know, the last one will be a lot more competitive, but probably will still go to the Democrats. I'm sorry, to the Republicans as well by a likely margin. So overall, Nebraska will go to the Republicans. Don't have much from this state. Hopefully, we'll get more as the election gets closer. But for now, this is my prediction, just based off what we usually see. We might have some surprises. The last district could go to the Democrats. It couldn't. But for now, this is what it's likely going to be. Let's move on to Colorado. So as you can see, we don't unfortunately have any recent polls. This is because Colorado generally is just a Democratic state. We don't have much to say about Colorado. So we will be putting it as a likely Democratic state. We don't have any new polls. Maybe that will change. It could change. It is getting more competitive, I believe. We do look down here. So this is wrong state. We look down here. It went to Clinton by only 4.9%. It went to Biden, however, by 13.5%. The most recent polls has the RCP average is 6.5%. So it is getting more competitive. So we will see what happens. It probably is going to go to the Democrats, though. There's not much room for change there. But anything could happen. Let's move on to New Mexico. Again, not too much stuff that's new. The latest poll that we have was back when Biden was still in the race, back in June. So not much we have to say here. But again, it is more competitive based off what we have seen. Clinton went to her by 8.3. Biden went to him by 10.6. And now, as of right now, based on what we have, the latest poll has it at 7. So it's getting closer, and it could change. But again, as for right now, we are going to be leaving it as a likely Democratic state. Now let's go on to a big state, which is Texas. All right, looking at what we have here, we do not have much, unfortunately, from Texas. This is just because both elections, and I believe in both 2016 and 2020, according to the polling averages, they were actually saying that Texas was going to go to the Democrats. It did not, obviously. It went to Trump both times by solid margin. So really, that's just simply not going to happen. That still continues to be just a pipe dream. But in reality, Texas is a pretty solid red state. I'm going to leave it as likely just for now, just because we don't have much on it for right now, anything that's really recent. But for now, I will leave it as likely. It could probably, there is a good chance it could be solid. Now let's move on to the Midwest, and this is the most important area. This is where the election will be decided, no doubt whatsoever. Let's start off in Minnesota, which should be on here. Oh, sorry, Pennsylvania. We will get to that in a minute. Whoa, what the heck? Minnesota, it is not that close. It was a lot closer before Biden actually dropped out. However, again, Minnesota is another one of the states where Democrats are usually overestimated. We can see here, just looking at this, 2016, it only went to Clinton by 1.5%. That is extremely close. And I'm not sure what the average was back in 2016, but I remember it was probably a lot more than that. It was probably a lot more than that. Same with Biden. So it has gotten a lot closer, but Minnesota will be, at least as of right now, looking at the polling averages, it's going to be a likely Democratic state. It could be a lean, but for now, based on what we have, it will be likely. Let's move on to Iowa. And Iowa, we have only one poll from before Biden dropped out. It has Trump up by a massive margin, though. Really, Iowa is just not competitive anymore. It used to be a competitive state, but as of right now, it just simply is just so red. It's just not going to change. So Iowa, immediately, solid red state. Illinois will be solid blue, no questions about it. It just simply is. Illinois will be and will remain a solid blue state. I'm not even going to look at the polling averages. In fact, no, we'll look at it. if there even is anything. But there might not be, just because of how blue the state has become. Yeah, so not much. Oh, actually, no, there's not much to see here. I will leave it as a solid. Because look at this. Look at the previous election. There's just not much to going on there. So we will be leaving it as a solid blue state. There's really no talk about that state whatsoever. Now we get to the good stuff. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. This is where it gets started. These three states will decide this election. And based off what we have seen, for the most part, Harris needs to win all three of those states if she wants a chance at winning this election. She has to win all three of them. Trump, for the most part, needs to win one. For the most part, he needs one. However, anything could happen, but it will ultimately come down to these three states. Let me just tell you. Let's start with Wisconsin. That's the big one. It's one of the big ones. The biggest one's probably Pennsylvania. Going to Wisconsin, see how close this is? You can see here, Trump was up by a pretty decent margin. See how he got real close here. Then Biden dropped out. Now got Harris in here. Trump remained ahead for a little bit. Harris eventually took over. But even now, it is extremely close. Harris is up by 1% according to the average. But if you look here, Trump was up here. The rest of them, Harris is above. But in this last one, but in the newest one, it is a tie. So we're going to have to see what happens. But again, staying neutral based on the polling averages, it could go either way. It really is very close. But staying neutral, according to polling averages, it's going to go Democratic by a small margin, itty bitty little margin. Let's move on to Michigan, another very, very important state. All right, Michigan, equally close, maybe a little bit up. Okay, really, one thing that should immediately be said: do not pay attention to this Bloomberg poll whatsoever. That is ridiculous. Right here. Having Harris up by 11%, absolute bullcrap. Michigan has not been that blue of a state since Obama, and the reality is Harris is just not an Obama. That is just not what she is. She is not that popular. This is a load of crap. These other polls are a lot more likely, so a polling average of 2% lead for Harris makes a lot more sense and is believable. Again, it is extremely close. This state was going to Trump for quite a while. Looking at it down here, Biden did win it by 2.8%, but it did go to Trump in 2016. So, looking at here, we can see Trump was actually ahead by a really decent margin. And we see how it got real close, but Trump stayed ahead. And stayed ahead. He only got left behind by Harris at the end of July. But even then, it remains extremely close. So, by 2%, it will stay a likely... lean Republican state. Or Democratic, I keep saying that. Lean Democratic state, although it could be this, but again, staying neutral based off what we have, it will be this. Now, let's get to the big state. This probably will be the deciding state in the whole election, that is Pennsylvania. Going here, look at that. 0.1%. That is what this election will come down to. This 0.1% right here. Even the New York Times here has Harris up by 4%, which is not surprising. That is, again, they tend to overestimate the Democrats in saying that. So chances are Trump's lead is actually higher than this. He likely is. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump's actually leading in all three of these states, because the Democrats are so often not always extremely, but for the most part, they are pretty heavily overestimated. But staying neutral here, and by the narrowest margin, as narrow as you can possibly get, it will be a lean Republican state by the narrowest of margins. We'll have to see what happens with that. Now to fill out the other two states here, Ohio will be solid red. That's where Trump's running mate is from. There's just no doubt about it. J.D. Vance, it's going to be solid red. As for Indiana, yeah, as you can see, solid red state. No doubt whatsoever it will be going to Trump. So now let's fill out the northeastern part of the country, the New England area. First of all, let's go to New York. New York, up That's a big margin for Harris, but not as big as she probably would want to be, because look at this. Clinton 21.3, Biden 23.1. Literally flipped the 1 to 3 around. That is insanely close. For a New York, for such a blue state, 14, that is not good for Harris whatsoever. She really would like that to be higher, but nevertheless, it is enough for this to be a solid blue state, but it is a lot closer. Okay, in general, these are all going to be solid blue states. There's really no chance. District of Columbia, solid blue, solid blue, solid blue all over the board. Apologies, I stand corrected. These should be likely. New Hampshire will also likely be Democratic. It actually got real close at some point. I believe we should have it on here. New Hampshire, yeah. It got real close at one point. At one point, I think Trump was actually ahead at one point for a narrow margin, but as of right now, it will be a likely Democratic state. Let's move on to West Virginia. We have one, and it is the New York Times, which has the state going to Harris by a narrow margin. So it's all that we have. It is New York Times. So going off of that, we will put into the lean Democratic side. Now we move on into all of these states, which are all pretty much just solidly red. There's really nothing to talk about down here. And now we get to this area, the southeastern region, which will be a deciding factor. Let's start off with Virginia. Big deal in Virginia. So, going off what we have here, we have, again, the New York Times has Harris up by 5%. Again, it's the New York Times, often overestimate the Democrats, but again, going off what we have, it will mean that Virginia will be a very narrowly likely Democratic. Apologies, people, I stand corrected. This is Virginia. I thought I looked at West Virginia. I'm not sure what happened here. What happened over here? I guess we just don't have anything. I was wondering about that, because this is usually a solid red state. Apologies about that. Little mistake right there, won't happen again. Let's move on to North Carolina. Very interesting state here, that's for sure. I wonder if they have it listed as a battleground state. They should. They do. Good. Yeah, this state, absolutely. Look at that. This is a state that was predicted to go to Biden and Clinton, I'm pretty sure, in both elections. It still went to Trump, though, which just goes to show you how they overestimate Democrats fairly often. And as of right now, and this is the one time that it actually is predicted to go to Trump. You see, New York Times has Harris up by 2. Likely, that's just simply not going to happen. It's a pretty solidly, pretty strong Republican state. And even though it's been predicted to go Democratic for both elections that Trump has been in so far, both times it went to him by a pretty good margin. So, again, staying neutral, and even then, staying neutral, the RCP average has Trump up by 1.2%, which means it probably will be 3 or 4% when the actual election happens. Going off of that, though, it will be a lean Republican state. Georgia, another super close state, highly important. Let's take a closer look. This is one of those states that Harris was talked about, like, oh, maybe she'll win. Reality is, probably not going to happen. What happened in 2020 was really just kind of a fluke. Trump was really not in a good position that whole election. Biden was just simply in so much of a better position. That is just not the case. Harris is just not what Biden was. She's not an Obama. She's not a Biden. She's not an Obama. She just isn't that. And on top of that, Democrats are in a worse position now because Trump obviously is inflating the problems of this current. Excuse me. He is currently inflating the problems of the administration that's currently in there. So, in general, it makes things difficult for the Democrats. So, Georgia will not. Well, and again, staying neutral, going off the polling averages here. Look at this. Even then, this just shows it right here. Trump is the favorite to win by 1%, which means it probably will be a lot higher. In fact, the New York Times, which again is well known for way overestimating Democrats, even they have Trump up by 4%. So chances are it's going to be based on what we have, it will be lean, but it probably will be higher. So now it comes down to this last state. We have right here. We have Florida. Oh, geez, sorry about this. I'm an idiot. This is blue. This is red. There we go. Yeah, Hawaii goes blue, Alaska goes red. It just always does. Anyways, we now have 30 electoral votes left with Florida. With Florida, this will be the last deciding. This will be assuming that everything else goes how this is predicted to go, this will be the last deciding state. And at the end of the day, just taking a close little look at it, it probably is not even it's not even listed as a battleground state because it's not anymore really, which is crazy because it used to be such a hotly contested state. Florida was the closest state when Obama was in there. But if we look at it now, it's just not close. Not anymore. Florida has become such a solidly red state. We can see it's up by 6.3% the RCP average. It's just not going to be close. You can see down here 10, 7, 5, 3, 6. It's not going to be close. In fact, Florida was supposed to go to Clinton in 2016. It still went to Trump. It went to Trump by 1.2. 2020, he actually increased his margin in Florida. It is just simply not going to be close. Florida is just simply now a pretty solidly red state. And with that, this is your election. Donald Trump should win the election with 287 electoral votes based on all the polling averages that we have at this moment. Everything that we have suggests that this is how the election is going to go. And this is your election. That's going to be all, guys, for today. I will be back soon with another update. I will keep on doing this right until election night. Is what I will keep on doing this, and we will see what happens. Subscribe and hit that bell notification. I will see you guys next time. Bye.